So why don't we go ahead, excuse me, we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome everybody to our webinar. My name is Nick Shubiak, and founder and integrated health consultant here at NSI Strategies. And we put these webinars together to support all of you. The change in all of our lives in the last 2 weeks with COVID-19 has been tremendous. And you as leaders of your teams and your organizations and the projects that you all work on, this is just our effort to support you all. And so we also want to let you know that we're going to have available on our website. If you go to our website, you can get these tools. They're free. Today, we're focusing on part 2 of our list of managing crisis through resilient leadership, of eliciting feedback and keeping structure. We're going to talk about what that means through the lens of resilient leadership, and also some resources that we're going to talk about today. You can get the full 6 steps of managing through crisis with resilient leadership, but also how to access and some key pieces of accessing resiliency and accessing your ability to be a resilient leader. So this is a repeat for some of you that were on the webinar, our part 1, but I think it's worth going back to leap back to, as we would say in resiliency. And the idea on the left-hand side is that these are all the qualities that really resilient leaders occupy. They have an ability to bounce back, an ability to establish community and connection, the ability to adapt to stress. And the idea of resiliency is a word in Latin which actually means to leap back, to come back to. And the idea for us is that most of you kind of know the stuff on the left. What happens to us, especially in crisis and under pressure, is that somehow we lose the ability to access that stuff on the left. So for us, our definition today is a skilled way of being that in disruption or in times of imbalance or with all the change and in stressor, when we have all these stressors going on, that we can find a way to maintain capacity, to access our gifts, which what we're saying here is that you already have the skills. For us, it's what happens to those skills. Why don't we have them to use them when we need them the most? And so we're going to focus in on the strengths of accessing our higher self, our best self, to really be in a place of having a sense of autonomy, power, and control. And so it's about our ability to manage the pressure and the stress of change in supportive and positive ways. So what's going on right now? No need to get into it, but part of the reason that I think, we are all feeling extremely tired, exhausted. There's reasons why we're having problems do things that normally would come easy to us, is because the waters that we are in are stressful. And we're hearing a lot of dysregulating things that knock us out of balance, like the invisible enemy, and not knowing how long we're going to have to be in this time of change. So there's an unknown duration and the widespread impact. All of these things are dysregulating. So it's important for us to understand that the way that you're feeling and the experiences that you're having, they're not your fault. And it's not because you're weak, and it's not because you're not working hard enough. In fact, it's just the way we are built. And I saw this great tweet and got permission from Dr. Hallion to use it from University of Pittsburgh. She says, "Are you finding yourself like you can't concentrate on work?" She says, "That's normal. Our brains are wired to pay attention to things that are scary, and that's what's helped keep us alive, right? Many of us are familiar with that fight or flight response that gets triggered. So if you can't concentrate, buckling down, tightening up, trying harder won't help you. It's just the science." And instead, she says, let it go. Well, I think letting things go is one of the hardest things to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about some techniques and some ways that maybe we can do that together. So what the heck is happening in our brain? So this is just a basic overview of the neuroscience of stress. And a lot of times we use the metaphor of kind of the elephant and the rider, right? Dan Heath made this popular in a lot of his leadership books. The idea is that the elephant is this tremendous, powerful energy resource of emotion and strength. And the rider kind of occupies that thinking part of the brain that's able to make decisions and use abstract thinking and creativity and problem solving. And under stress, what happens is that rider gets disconnected from that elephant, and the elephant takes over. And that's why we find ourselves in stronger states of emotional states. We lean towards aggression, and we lose the best part of our brain when we need it the most, the place where we, in that prefrontal cortex, where we access abstract thinking and problem solving and coordination. Those are the things that we need the most. And that's exactly what it is that we lose. And so, again, for us as resilient leaders, it's how do we return back when we get disconnected, when the elephant is kind of running amok without the rider. And so it's not about learning new skills for us. It's really about managing ourselves so that we can get back into the best of who we are. So what happens to us is that stress, which is kind of a normal, healthy response, becomes distress. And so what actually is kind of somewhat healthy for us and can be a normal, natural response, which actually has motivating and energizing components to it, where we feel sharp, excited, ready, and balanced, switches into toxic stress or distress. And what happens when we shift into that distress is that we have trouble concentrating, we're forgetful. A lot of us have a strong internal dialogue, and that internal dialogue can become extremely self-defeating or critical. We find ourselves ruminating and worrying about things, experiencing feelings of angry or overwhelmed, and what we talk about in terms of the fight, flight, or freeze response of what's happening to us. And so it puts us, as we again start to clamp down and try and get control, we squeeze tighter and tighter, we find that actually we're losing our grip. Our grip is weakening because we're squeezing so tight, and we have a sense of feeling out of control. So how do we manage this? And these are 3 steps of opening up our key to awareness. And awareness is our key to accessing our resiliency. Again, it's not the idea that you're not going to move from stress to distress. It's how do you handle it when it happens? How do you return back from distress and manage that place? And so I love this quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, between stimulus, so the things that are happening around us and happening seemingly to us, and the response to those things, he says there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And that puts us back in control. That's the control that we were talking about before. And it's in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Our personal empowerment is in that space. So when things get fast, resilient leaders use these techniques to actually start to slow things down. Our wisdom, our strength, our freedom, our personal powers are in that space, because in that space, what seems like an automatic response isn't. It's about choice, and we can access that choice. How do we do it? Well, 3 ways to access your awareness is through your mind, your body, and your behaviors, your actions. So in your mind, asking yourself, what is my story here? What am I telling myself? And is it a good story? Is it helpful? Is it positive or is it negative? Because I can change that. So it's thinking of who's doing the thinking, awareness. And then the body knows best. The body sometimes knows what I'm experiencing emotionally even better than my mind does. So what am I experiencing in my body? Where is that energy? Is it in my shoulders? Is my jaw tight? Does my stomach hurt? And what are the insights, the wisdom in the body that body experience is telling me about myself? What can it tell me and teach me? If I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, and I tell myself, I'm not going to let that bother me, I'm not going to be upset, yet my body is telling me I'm tight and I'm angry, well, then I have to listen to my body, because then I can use this wonderful brain of mine to use the interventions to manage my anger. But if I don't allow the insights of the body to teach me what it is that I need to do, I miss out on that opportunity of awareness. And then in my actions, especially as leaders, everyone's watching us. So what are my actions right now? And for a lot of us, under stress, speed kills. We move faster and faster. We talk faster and faster. So are my actions a sign of an experience, of an emotional energy that may need my attention? And again, on the website, you can download these. We have a nice card. So some of the feedback I got from our part 1 webinar is that the tips and things were helpful, but also it was a great opportunity for all of us to connect. So I'd like to just check in with all of you through the chat, if you're willing, and just to check in to see how folks are doing. And it's a really hard question to ask right now, and it's a really hard question to answer, especially since we can't see each other. But in the chat, how are things going right now? Are people feeling energized? Are we feeling exhausted? Are we having, challenges? And what are some of those challenges? So just curious if folks might be willing to share some of that in the chat, in the spirit of us coming together in community. So thanks, Brendan. Hey, Lee is here. I see you, Lee. So Brendan says, I'm healthy and able to keep on working while hiding, feeling very fortunate. So yeah, a lot of folks are experiencing real gratitude because of knowing that we have places and safe places to be, while we know a lot of other folks in our community and the people that we serve may not. Lee's sharing that starting the day has been really hard, but he says it gets easier once he gets into it. It helps to speak with people throughout the day and not isolate. Lee, that's a great point. We're going to talk about, the mind, the body, and also socialization, how those are key components to helping us stay regulated. So thanks for those shares in the chat. It just helps connect us all and understand that and recognize that we're not alone in a lot of the ways that we're feeling. I know myself, I've had a really hard time with sleep. Sleep's been hard for me. And I think that also my concentration's been a little bit more scattered than usual for me, which has been really challenging. And I find myself kind of beating myself up over that and blaming myself and trying to have awareness around that has been hard for me. And so Pam's sharing, I go in waves with multiple feelings. Yep. Throughout each day, I used to be more steady. Energy, anxiety, confidence, stress, optimism. Pam, thanks for sharing that. It's such a great point. We are so dynamic, and we ask how we are feeling, and that's a linear question to a nonlinear answer. We experience all these emotions in multidimensional ways, and even the language that we use just fails us. It falls short to explain anger or frustration or optimism. So thanks for that. And Jeremy's sharing, it's been amazing to see how our clinic has transformed into a telehealth agency overnight. Jeremy, I was talking with some colleagues this morning about this. What you folks are doing out there has been nothing short of tremendous. The last 2 weeks, completely transforming your care delivery to telehealth services has been incredible and inspirational. So we're seeing just this whole mix of things going on. A lot of folks are also sharing too the stress of being on the front lines and attending to the clients and serving the community while they feel themselves putting themselves at risk, and even worse for some of them returning back home to their families, concerned about the safety of their own families, and are they putting their own families at risk. So thanks for that, and I really appreciate the heartfelt shares in the chat box. So the other feedback I got from part 1 of the webinar was that this was everyone's favorite slide. that what we did here was a exercise in helping us access our resiliency through mindfulness and being grounded. And there's a few simple techniques that we can do, but we're not going to talk about them. We're going to actually do them. So I'm going to invite you now, to just take a moment, not just out of this day, but even out of the learning of this webinar, that there's nothing right now you need to learn. There's nothing now you need to understand. Everything that you need is within you. It's in your capacity right here, right now. And I'm going to invite you to just gaze into this screen, or if you want, you can go ahead and close your eyes, whatever seemingly works best for you. And in this technique of mindfulness, of kind of being mindfully aware, we're going to just go ahead and become mindful of the colors and the amazing different shades of green that are in the forest in front of us. And just by focusing in on and becoming aware of those colors, we are making potentially an unconscious process, looking at a picture, very conscious and aware. And in that awareness, we can even notice maybe the different types of leaves on all the different trees, and how the different textures and shapes and colors and sizes all seem to work together, and yet all are uniquely individual. And so we can also use techniques in the offices and the rooms that we're in to just look at our surroundings and become aware of colors and specific shapes and sizes. And this starts to help us get into that space that Viktor Frankl talked about, that space between stimulus and response, that we can slow things down, because it's actually us that controls the speed and the tempo, not things outside of us, but things inside of us through our thoughts. And then another great technique is diaphragmatic breathing. And many of you are very familiar and comfortable with using breathing, but we're going to go ahead and practice this exercise today as much as a teaching, as a support for all of us here joining on this webinar. And I'll invite you to use your mind's eye to shift it now to your breath. And you can keep your eyes open or keep your eyes closed, but becoming aware consciously of your breath. Maybe even that breath right now is a little bit awkward, as is mine, because again, I've taken an unconscious process and I've made it conscious, aware. So I'm a little bit out of breath, but I'm going to go ahead and focus and invite you to do that on your in breath, and then we'll focus on our out breath. And we're going to, in a second, focus on our in breath for 3 to 4 seconds, and I'll count that out for you. And then focus on our out breath for 3 to 4 seconds. And we're going to do this together for 3 breaths. And so we're going to go ahead and start on our in breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our out breath. 2, 3, 4. And then again, in breath. 2, 3, 4. And then out breath. 2, 3, 4. And then one more in. 2, 3, 4. And then out. 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to do one more. And then slowly, if your eyes are closed, allow yourself to come back to the room, maybe become aware of your hands and your feet, and know that we just took maybe a minute to step out of this webinar and focus in on our breath and our awareness of the room and the colors. And I just invite again to kind of come back in the room, and in the chat, maybe share if you feel a shift, if you feel a shift of a change in your energy, or an awareness that maybe your shoulders are shrugged just a slight bit lower, or have things slowed down a little bit for you where you feel a little bit clearer. And I know I feel a little slower and a little bit more connected and grounded after just doing those exercises. So we're going to jump in and get into a little bit of learning and talk about our part 2 here, 3, 4 of eliciting feedback and keeping structure. Pam, this is part of a cartoon I stole from you. It's one of my favorites about change and who wants change. Well, everybody wants to change. Who wants to change, and then we lose our folks, and then of course leaders who wants to lead the change, and the room gets scattered. And so, eliciting feedback and thoughts and ideas from your teams. The idea behind this is that we know that we need to get feedback from our teams, but how do we do it? And the idea as a resilient leader is that we plan meetings and create spaces for feedback and information sharing. The reason in crisis that we want to plan these things is because it helps regulate our staff. And what I mean by creating spaces is that we can do this in a planned way, but also in a mini way of creating a space where we completely focus on the employee or the people in front of us to invite information sharing. The idea of opening and eliciting feedback is that as a leader, we're open to all the ideas that our employees have. But the thing about a resilient leader is that they aren't afraid to hear all the different ideas and thoughts and things that the employees think we should do. But you don't have to implement them. You don't have to even use any of their ideas or suggestions. But by hearing them in that process, this is what starts to regulate your team. So just in the same way we use some of those skills to bring us back into balance, to get back into that prefrontal cortex, by allowing your employees to connect with you as a leader, to voice their opinions, concerns, that starts to form connections between the team and starts to tap into the best of their own creativity. So it's the process that we support, not necessarily the ideas at first. In fact, by opening up this process, we drill down into some more and more creative ideas because we're putting that prefrontal cortex back online. The other area to focus on is that as a resilient leader, we allow that process to flow through, and we use our energy of awareness and consciousness to filter out what it is that we don't need and utilize and filter in what it is that we do need, letting unhelpful information pass through. Again, it's not our responsibility to comment on all this stuff. It's to acknowledge it, to hear it, and then decide if it's going to be helpful for us or not. The process in this is that the entire team ends up feeling like and experiencing like they've been heard and connected by the leader. And then for our step 4 of creating structure, or keeping structure and creating structure and being the structure, how you are the structure. In times of crisis, resilient leaders are deliberate. They become the structure that may have been eroded. You do this in a way by your own behaviors, the way that you act, the things that you do. Everyone watches you as a leader. The way you walk through the hallway is the message of how the entire office, the entire health center can be. So resilient leaders don't run into offices. They don't jump in and out of meetings or break conversations with an employee to go answer the phone. You see this all the time in crisis, where you're having a meeting with your team and the leader gets a phone call and jumps up and runs out of the room. That leader who does that just dysregulated the entire leadership team or whoever was in that room. Instead, resilient leaders stay connected and mindful of where they are. Now, I know that certain positions, certain people have to take those calls, but at the most you can reduce those things because you're exacerbating the anxiety and the stress on the entire team. So be the model for what you want to see in your health center. Your teams will reflect it back. And then if you're seeing things that you don't like, you need to look in, because this is a difficult thing, but your organization, your teams, your employees are reflecting back to you your energy. So if you don't like what you see, not just from one person, you know, but when you're seeing it from the group, from the team, that's an opportunity for you to look inward and say, okay, what do I need to adjust to? What do I need to get back to return to in my own resiliency? And then finally, we know this, right? What enhances resiliency? And then why am I not doing it, right? My own self. I have a pretty steady meditation practice, except for the last couple of weeks when I need it the most. It's dropped off. Why? Well, I know I need to do all these things on the left. You guys are aware of this stuff. Why don't we do it? Well, it's because we have forgotten that it's an exponential effort. What we mean by exponential is that to get anything out of that list on the left side of the slide, I got to put energy into it. And right now I feel like I don't have energy. So it becomes diminished returns. We have to remember that through our mind, going into those mindfulness states, that's a way to start to get us back into balance. If we can't do it through our mind, if we're dysregulated, we go through our body, doing activities, connecting, exercises, doing jump rope, whatever, going for a walk. All those are the things that we have to do when we can't use our mind, is go to our body. And then as Lee suggested earlier in his chat, the third thing that works for us to getting back online is human interaction. We have to combine those things in a way of putting the energy in up front to then capitalize on the things that we know that are helpful for us to do. And when we invest that energy, 1 + 1 becomes 3. We get an exponential result of increased energy. But this is why it's difficult. And so all this is a reminder for us that it's hard and that we have to do specific things, even more so now that we are all dysregulated because of the stress that we're under as individuals, family, culture, and society. So we're coming up on our time at 1:30 here. I want to be mindful of folks' time. I want to invite you next April 7th is part 3, where we're going to get into communication and flexibility. It wraps up our 3-part series. I'm excited. I connected with Karen Johnson. We work together at National Council. She is just started last year a focused company on trauma-informed care, and she's going to join us for a webinar. I actually worked with her this morning, and she's just absolutely phenomenal and fantastic. So I'm really excited. You can join us again. I'll put the link in if you're going to have some time and you want to just hang out and talk a little bit. It'll also be good. We'll utilize the resources in terms of our Zoom chat so that we can, hopefully that link came through, so that we can see each other a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome you all to join us. I hope that you'll come. We can use the video to see each other a little bit more. And go to the website. You can download these tools. They're there for you. You can give them to your staff. Feel free to get them out there to any folks that you think might benefit from them. And then finally, thank you. Thank you for the incredible work that you are doing out there. This is our effort, like I said, to support you all on the front lines. So I just want to thank you all for the work that you do and the real risks that you are taking. And so if I can be of any assistance to you or anyone here on the NSI team, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call me, or text me. So please stay safe and be well, and thank you for the work that you do. Take care.